All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Jen Shujayantha, and I'm the founder and lead organizer for the Davy Co-op, an abolitionist feminist coalition dedicated to increasing community capacities to end gender violence in Georgia and the U.S. South. I am here today on behalf of our campaign Igniting Hope, which seeks to end the criminalization of surviving gender violence in Georgia. I want to thank you all for joining us today for the screening of And So I Stayed. I am honored to introduce you all to the co-director, producer, and writer Natalie Pattillo, and co-director, producer, director of photography Daniel A. Nelson, who are here with us today with the And So I Stayed team. Just so you guys know a little bit more about them, Natalie is a New York-based multimedia journalist. Her reporting bylines include the New York Times, MSNBC, Vice, Jezebel, New York Magazine, Al Jazeera America, and Salon. She received a master's degree from Columbia Journalism School in 2017. Before moving to New York in 2015, she freelanced with Marfa Public Radio and the West Texas Public Radio. Because Natalie has experienced domestic violence and is in a past relationship, her mission to uplift survivors and their stories is a personal one. Natalie's own experiences as a survivor, as well as the passing of her sister, who was killed at the hands of an abusive boyfriend in 2010, helps her understand what position the survivors in this film might have been in when they were fighting for their lives. Daniel worked as a cinematographer and researcher on Oscar-nominated director David Francis's feature-length documentary, The Death and Life of Martha P. Johnson, which celebrates the lasting political legacy of trans icon Martha P. Johnson and seeks to finally solve the mystery of her unexplained death, that premiered in the 2017 Tribeca Film Festival and landed on Netflix. Daniel received his master's thesis from Columbia Journalism School in documentary filmmaking in 2016. His thesis at Columbia was a short documentary called Posture about the controversial world of competitive yoga, which premiered at the 2017 Long Island International Film Expo and was published on Yoga Journal. Thank you guys both for joining us today. How you doing?
Doing great. How are you doing?
Good, good. If you guys want, I'll just jump right into it. That's cool.
Please.
All right. Sure. So I absolutely thought the film was incredible. I had not really ever seen something until this point really capture the stories of the survivors we work with down here. So it was really an honor to be able to get to see the screener. I guess my first question is, after hearing Nikki, Kim's, and Tanisha's stories, our Igniting Hope survivor stories very clearly show that criminalized survival from gender violence is not necessarily a red state problem or a blue state problem. It's really a broken justice system problem. Our survivors at Igniting Hope have discussed experiencing the same exact disbelief that Nikki experienced in the documentary when speaking with the investigator made her realize that she was being investigated and not helped. Based on your experiences putting together this documentary, what are areas of change within the justice system and grassroots community you are hoping this film inspires people to enact?
Thanks so much, Jen. That's so well said, and really appreciate your insight, as well as the survivors who you're in connection with through Igniting Hope. It's incredible work that you all are doing. I think the goal of creating this film throughout the past, I lose count every year, especially with the pandemic, but it's been, I guess, six years now, maybe seven. Full on 7 years. But I think the goal was just to not only raise awareness about this horrific thing that happens to survivors who are incarcerated for choosing to live, but to tell their stories or help them tell their stories in ways that show them as the incredible human beings that they are beyond what they have experienced because of the justice system, or the legal system, as most of us like to call it, because it feels very unjust, especially with this issue. And with that in mind, we just wanted to make sure that the survivors, not only in the film, obviously first and foremost, the survivors in the film felt validated, but the survivors who watched the film feel that validation as well. And so we hope that then would translate into real, genuine empathy from people who are prosecutors or people who are judges and lawyers who, even if you are a defense lawyer for a survivor who has been criminalized, there are ways you can hold yourself accountable. We hold ourselves accountable as filmmakers and, in many areas. And so we're trying to have this conversation about accountability as well as, making sure that in all of that, the survivors and their dynamic selves are not lost in like the legal talk of it or the
Right.
issue talk of it, but they're people and like these are their lives.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I feel like a lot of the times, like even when we try to talk to people about igniting hope, there's just so much legal jargon, right? But then there's also like the bare bones of it where it's like, how is somebody now facing prosecution for being in a situation where it's their lives or their lives, you know, essentially it's they're put against two very, very bad negatives. Daniel, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, really well said. I totally agree with everything Natalie just said. I think a lot of people aren't really familiar with the concept of criminalized survival. So I think for a lot of folks, it's a really eye-opening topic to just discover. I know it was that way for me when we started making this movie, and yeah, just to add on to what Natalie touched on earlier, the legal system can be an incredibly dehumanizing system. And I think it does that particularly to survivors of domestic violence. So this movie, we made a really concerted effort to, you know, I think we get tired of saying it sometimes, but just humanizing the women in this story. It feels kind of crazy to have to say that out loud, but the way the legal system is set up, it is incredibly dehumanizing. So we tried to do that from start to finish with this movie, and let the survivors tell their stories in their own words.
Right, right. I particularly love that y'all, especially as like a digital and film medium, you really did a good job also not buying into like sensationalizing the stories themselves, right? Like you guys really let the survivors tell what has happened, and then you guys provide context based on that. I feel like whenever we even looked at media publications that came out as our survivors were going into trial, a lot of it was very sensationalized, didn't really give the full picture or even give them the due credit that they had being survivors of domestic violence. So I guess to kind of move into the next question, this film does a really great job showing the power of survivor defense work and how grassroots approaches are critical in order to end the use of the criminal justice system to punish survival. What aspects of campaigns that you followed made the work so much more impactful and meaningful to you? What parts of this experience do you hope others get to experience in pursuing this type of work?
I love that question. You know what it makes me think of?
Hmm.
It makes me think of the scene of Kim at the Women's March,
Hmm.
and I might get choked up talking about it, but where
No.
she's like laughing and she, you know, and like feeling, you can sense us like freedom in her and lightness in her in doing this incredibly hard work. I
Absolutely.
always like treasure that moment where you get a close up of Kim, like just her such a genuine, powerful smile,
Yeah.
and just her ability to find joy in like uh, you know this like I said, this work that can take so much. I can't imagine out of her, and I think seeing that. For the past few years with Kim and other survivors and their loved ones, just being able to like, you know, find even if it's a small window of hope, they're able to somehow hook onto that hope and just run with it. And I think that you know that's really hard to do. It's really
Right.
painful when you get your hopes up and they come crashing down. I can't imagine um, you know, especially if you are incarcerated and there's might be hope that you can get out sooner than your release date, and then that sort of diminishes. And Kim went through that, and I know Nikki and
Right.
Tanisha, you know, several different ways, and I just think all of them, you know, like Tanisha and being able to, you know, like, what do you want when you come home from prison? And she's like, I want a seafood platter. And so, like, hanging on to those moments of brevity that, like, really can keep us going. And, you know, and Nikki as well, we share the moment with her and her kids, wishing her happy birthday. We see her art. We see, you know, so many aspects of them where they are choosing to the hope aspect, as opposed to, I mean, I'm sure they grapple with the trauma, and I know they do, but I think that's the biggest takeaway I think I've had, is to, I'm just like so impressed by their compassion, and their continued, I hate that they have to continue to be so resilient.
Right.
I'm sure they're so tired.
Right.
But yeah, I think just being completely amazed by those joyous aspects that they hold on to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think you hear Kim talk about that in the movie, about how this advocacy work is something that she does in her spare time. And this is mostly volunteer work for her because she cares so much. And, I think a lot of folks in general have this sort of inherent trust that the legal system is going to do the right thing most of the time. And I think it's very clear that a lot of times it doesn't, particularly with cases of domestic violence. And so it just like adds that much more importance to the work that Kim does on that grassroots level, and just being this voice who has experienced this before. And I think with many issues, the more exposure that you have to it, the more you get a better understanding of it. And I think that that's just like the value that Kim and all these survivors and their friends and family of people who are experiencing this now and going through this now, really shows you just how important that grassroots effort is.
Absolutely. And I've told you guys, I've told both of you time and time again, like I really loved personally, especially as someone who was a child survivor, like I loved your depictions of the kids in this documentary. Like I feel like so many folks like use kids kind of in the larger dialogue of like, this is a conflict between one parent and another parent, but like domestic violence by extension is also family violence. And you being able to show like Tanisha's son looking at the photos and putting together the scrapbook, I thought that it was these beautiful little moments where it's like these families are affected, but these families are also fighting, and we need to join in on their fight. I really loved also when you were looking at, besides Kim and her bullhorn, going in the Women's March, trying to get signatures and everything. I really loved that you guys also did a really good job focusing on not just the legal and not just the psychology, but really that community aspect of all of this, right? Like, we are here to help with childcare. We are here to help get this person justice, but we are also here because our communities deserve so much better, right? I guess I know this is a little bit of an impromptu question, but when you guys were filming this documentary, and even now that this project is finally done and concluded and wrapped, and we're now watching it here, how do you feel in terms of reception with audiences such as prosecutors, legislators, individuals who really do a lot of the shaping of the justice system for community benefit? But as we see here, the community has not benefited from having survivors be criminalized, right? Do you feel that the reception with these types of professionals have been positive? Do you feel the reception has been kind of conflicting?
So I know I keep saying really good question, but these are all really great questions, and we've had time to process some of these things as well. And we're seeing it in real time. And my cat just meowed, in case anyone is wondering what that is. But I think the reception that we know, at least from DAs and judges, the most personal one we know about is in Tanisha's case, right, where we were able to help put together a 10-minute video that the prosecutor and judge watched, and got to know her and her family better, and got to see why she was qualified for the DVSJ, the Domestic Violence Survivors Justice Act. And because it seemed like that was, part of what helped, right, to see the real lives. You can't turn away from Tanisha's son or Tanisha's mom or sister while you're faced with the video that you're watching, seeing their grief and the despair that they have after Tanisha has been incarcerated for several years, and seeing that that maybe was why like the court decided to let her out on earlier release was such a boost for, obviously us as filmmakers, but us, like survivors, and, Tanisha is now free. And so in that not small, but, in that very specific context, like with Tanisha's case, we've seen that the exposure to these community efforts, these, family talking about their loved ones has a real impact on the powers that be, as they say. So that has been really heartening, and there have been some really hard things to swallow too. There have been people, and I won't name names, but if you want to DM me, I'm just kidding. But there have been we got a flood of screening requests after the film was covered in the New York Times, which is great. We got one from a federal judge, actually, and they wanted to use the film to maybe for their DV event. And they watched the film and they decided it was not for them. And that was really hard. And so we asked, I think I got Dan too, and I was like, ask them why. And they were like, well, we wanted to see why the DA in these cases thought that, going for murder was like valid or something. Like essentially they wanted to know why, they wanted to hear from the prosecutors of these cases.
Right.
And that's not the film we're making. That
Right.
was never, I mean, we actually have interviewed several prosecutors throughout the course in these cases, not all, but some. But I'll let Dan take it off from here, because I know, like, what do we say about the film when we're like, well, you want the other side. What can you do when you want that other side, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, just foundationally, there's a lot of work to be done still. I think we have had a positive reception with folks in the legal world, but like Natalie's mentioning, there's still a lot of work to be done. And I think that folks a lot of times want to continue to do this like false equivalence, like both sidism sort of thing, where like we have to hear both sides of the story and like put them up on like equal footing. And sometimes that's just like not the case, And I think it's clear with all of the cases or the women that we've told their stories in this film, it was clear. I mean, that's why Tanisha's not in prison now, and that's why Nikki's sentence was greatly reduced, because the decision from the appellate court. So I think that happens a lot, and I think we have it's this sort of dance that we have to do as filmmakers, or balancing act to try to get folks to understand that part of it, and that this is not a true crime. I mean, Natalie has been a champion of this in the very early going of just making this effort to not have this be like your typical true crime documentary, and putting these women back on trial in this film. That's just not the film that we're doing. And if that's what you're looking for, then you're going to have to look elsewhere, So yeah, that's, sorry, go ahead, Natalie.
Oh, you're on mute.
I'm like having an exciting moment. I said, what we say, Dan always says it so well, though. He's like, if you want to read what happened in trial, go read the transcripts. Okay.
Right.
Go read
It's open record. Right.
Like that's, if you want to make a film, a true crime film about criminalized survival, you go for it. And there's plenty out there, unfortunately.
Right.
Right. That part is disheartening when you see that someone in power has the ability to show this film to like more powerful people, and then they pull that rug out from under you because you didn't show you didn't show like the DA in Nikki's case, which based on the appellate decision didn't need to be shown because there were lies spewed about her. So anyway, I could go on and on about that, but I think that's still something, like, as a survivor as well, is very hard for me to detach myself from when people are like, no, we don't want to like use the film to educate the people that we think or that we thought we were going to use the film for, but also remembering that like there are so many survivors who have reached out to us, email, Instagram, Facebook, you know, in person when we had our Brooklyn premiere, that we're just so thankful that we made this film, that I honestly, you know, like that's the biggest win, and that's first and foremost. So if other people want to come join us and learn about why this is completely unjust to incarcerate folks for wanting to live, then come on. But like if not, like then all right, like we can't win everyone over. But yeah, it's yeah.
Oh, the little claps, yes.
Throw one of those out there.
Yeah.
Amen.
No, I love everything you're saying. Like, well, my first thought that popped in my head was I really do want to give you guys such good due credit, because I feel like people who make documentaries, like there's such like this push that like you are detached from your subject. So like whatever happens with your subject, you cannot be involved with it. And you guys are also organizers. You know, you were there, you collected these stories, you put something together to help somebody, instead of just using this to be transactional. Like, I will show your story, right? Like, here's also you giving us this knowledge, let us try to help. I think that's a beautiful thing. And I will say, like, New York and Georgia politically are very different, but a lot of the stuff is exactly the same. You know, like, we've had great support from some folks who are like, family violence is a mitigating circumstance. Domestic violence is a mitigating circumstance. So like, we have to consider the full history rather than just like this isolated incident that really doesn't have the full context of everything going on under that roof, right? We have other folks who are like, they know what they did. And, you know, we're only here to look at this one occasion. And that's what we're going to be doing here today. And like, I do also struggle with that, you know, because it's like, if we're really trying to point out justice, it seems more so like we're just trying to pick somebody to punish. And I don't know if I agree with that, right? And I think when we look at the stories of our survivors, like, that's a very like apt example on how these are people who are in the worst case scenarios that are now punished for taking the actions that they need to survive, right? Like, I don't know where New York stands, but Georgia, we have like one of the highest rates of domestic violence homicide, right, in the entire country. We also have like very strict laws around people who perpetuate gendered violence, right? But then like, what are we doing if we're getting to the point where so many people are facing homicide that now we're incarcerating them, right? Like, that I think is very key to like, this isn't just a legal issue. This is also an advocacy issue. This is a community issue. But anyways, before I ramble on, because I know we're on our last 6 minutes, I have one last question for you guys. Where are the subjects of the film now? And how can viewers be connected to their work and support systems? Do you have any calls to action that you would like to share?
Yes, we do. So Kim is she's in New York, and she has a fabulous website that you all should visit to see all of her incredible work. So kimdadubrown.com, and learn more about Kim there and her work. And then Tanisha is, you know, free and rebuilding her life and being back with her community and her loved ones. And then Nikki is still behind bars, sadly, and she hopefully will get out in about 3 years, hopefully sooner, you know, we'll see. But you can also turn to our website and donate to any of these survivors directly. The cash goes directly to them. And our website is andsoistayfilm.com. And then I'll let Dan talk about some other take action things that we encourage folks to do.
Yeah, with each of the survivors, we have a page set up. So it's just andsoistayedfilm.com/Nikki or /Kim or /Tanisha, and you can learn more about how you can help them through those pages on our website. We also have a take action page that's a more general page for folks who watch the film and ask themselves, what can I do? Go to andsoistayedfilm.com/take action. And just reach out to us. We have a contact form on the website too. We would love to hear from you. It's, you know, while this is a New York State specific story, part of our impact campaign is touching other communities, like communities in the South and all over the country. tell us about what legislation exists, what's pending, what's going on in your communities, who are your representatives, because we want to highlight those things as well. Because it's great that this piece of legislation is now a law in New York State, but there's so much more work that we can do throughout the South and the rest of the country in terms of crafting similar legislation and getting that to be all over the country.
Right. This is not a one-off thing. This isn't, it's like actually happening every day that survivors are being criminalized. So let's, this is not like a one-off situation. So wanted that context out there that it's happening in every state, in every community, big, small town, like you name it. And you could probably find a case. Sadly, local news reporting sometimes makes it out to be that it's like a woman murdered her husband, like the headlines don't look the best, so it's hard to follow. But find cases in your community. Look to Jen's work and Igniting Hope. And in Tennessee, there's Free Hearts organization, and they're coalition building for clemency cases. So there's definitely folks out there that would love your support.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Natalie and Daniel, for joining us today to give a little inside scoop to your incredible documentary, truly, like incredible documentary. I want to thank everybody here who came out today to watch the film. If you want to get in touch with Southern Arts, their website is www.southarts.org/Southern Circuit. If you'd like to get in touch with the Davie Co-op and find out more ways you can get involved with Igniting Hope, you can visit our website at www.thedaviecoop.org. If you are a survivor facing criminalization, or want someone or have a loved one who is currently on the inside because of crimes related to criminalized survival, please feel free to reach out to us. We are happy to provide pre-trial or post-conviction relief support. I want to thank you guys all so much again today for joining us for this very important discussion. And I hope that we hear from some of y'all soon. And I hope that you guys all have a really great weekend. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.